Know the Source on One Radio Network. And a very pleasant good evening to you. This is Patrick Timpone, and it's April 30th, last day of the month, 2009, and this is OneRadioNetwork.com. We're live broadcasting via the internet worldwide on OneRadioNetwork.com. It's a pleasure to have you here. Open Phone Friday tomorrow, 7 p.m. Central right now. Tonight we have a very interesting guest who I've been looking forward to talking with, Jim Rogers, who has been investing longer than you and I really care to think about. He is a very successful investor, financial commentator. He has his website, jimrogers.com. He has 5 books under his belt. The latest 2 were A Bull in China and his latest, A Gift to My Children. Jim Rogers wrote that. He said, if you were really smart and knew what you were doing, in 1907, one would move to London. And in, 1807, you'd move to London. 1907, you moved to New York City. And in 2007, one would move to China. Well, that's exactly what he did. And we find him, it's Thursday morning, May 1st, 8 o'clock in the morning in Singapore. Mr. Jim Rogers, good morning. Have you had breakfast yet, sir?
Not yet, Patrick. Slight correction. It's Friday morning here.
Oh, it's Friday morning. That's right.
It's already Friday.
Well, good. You could just tell me what the market's going to do, and then I'll win, right? Isn't that how that works?
May 1st. Yeah, it's already May here, so we're moving right along.
So it's so interesting to think about that, because I love to watch those old period pieces, Jim Rogers, about London in the early in the 1800s and how exciting time it was, and so you really feel like that about China in the early 2000s.
Well, if you go to China, I've been going to China since 1984, 25 years now, and it is just a staggering change to see the difference. When I first went there was, Mao suit. Everybody was wearing a Mao Zedong suit. There was one radio station, one TV, one newspaper, and not much else. Lots of bicycles and not much else. Now it's just overwhelming. The skyline of major Chinese cities makes even American city skylines dwarf. It's just staggering how much vibrancy is, how much progress there is, how much money there is, how successful they are. And my goodness, they're certainly capitalists. They call themselves communists, but I tell you, they're the best capitalists. They're certainly among the best capitalists in the world right now.
And what kind of lifestyle, quality of life does one have in Singapore?
Well, in Singapore, which is not China, but it's only 2 or 3 hours away. They've got the best health care in the world here, got the best medical care. Everything works in Singapore. Singapore is Singapore is probably the best success story of the past 40 years, because they went from very little to being, well, maybe per capita, the richest country in the world, because their foreign currency reserves are staggering, but there are only 4.5 million people here. China and Japan have a lot higher absolute numbers of money, amounts of money, but Singapore on a per capita basis is just, it's amazing. So we're happy here so far.
And the pollution is better than other spots in China, I hear.
Well, there is no pollution here in Singapore.
There isn't. How'd they manage that, Jim Rogers? How do they manage that?
It's an island, and they don't have much heavy polluting industry, if you will. Most of their success has been from technology or healthcare, pharmaceuticals, things like that. And it's small. I mean, it's a very small little island, and so with only 4.5 million people, I guess it's right, in the sea. So the wind keeps the pollution away if there were any.
Can you get good quality organic, good food there?
Oh, yes. My wife, we have 2 little children, and my wife insists only on organic food, so we only eat, we only eat organic food because we eat the same thing the children eat.
I see. If you care to join us with legendary investor Jim Rogers, here's our phone number, 888 663-6386. We'll tie you right up via One Radio Network. Talk to Jim Rogers in Singapore, where it's Friday morning, 8 a.m. there. My name is Patrick Timpone. Emails are fair as well, patrick@oneradionetwork.com. And I asked Mr. Rogers if he was on a landline, because we try to get landlines for interviews. And he said, no, it's China. Everybody has a cell phone. So you can't, you can't get a landline, or you just don't want one?
Well, first, Patrick, it's not China. Singapore is a
okay, I'm sorry.
From China.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like saying, England is part of Germany or something.
I see.
No, it's not. No, most people do have cell phones, and I remember the first time when I was still living in the U.S., first time I ran into somebody who only had a cell phone, I thought, gosh, that's peculiar. But now I realize it's not peculiar at all. It makes great sense. Why get a landline when a cell phone can go anywhere and everywhere? And what do you need a landline for?
And it's very interesting, and I don't know what this is about. It's maybe something to look into. But the quality of the cell phone connections we get international far exceeds what one gets when I call from Texas to New Mexico or something.
Well, I'm embarrassed to say it, but many countries have better telephone service, certainly mobile service, than we do in the U.S. still. Likewise, better computer service than we have in the U.S. I don't know why, but the U.S. just didn't make the same strides. And it may be because many nations just didn't have great landline service, and so they just leapfrogged. They just jumped over the whole wired and copper wires and landline services and went straight to technology, and so they did a better job.
Yes, sir. Well, let's talk about that area, then we'll move this way. In China and Singapore, now I've just learned they are two separate countries. See, I got a little geography lesson here from Jim Rogers. Where did all this money come from? Do they create new dollars as we do and borrow from a central bank? Or how does it work in that part of the world?
No. The most